Hello, good people, but now you know the deal. If the camera angle is off, it's not by design. And blinded comes with the territory. The great man himself told y'all. And I don't think he told y'all once, but a couple of times. You know? Who am I talking about? None other than my favorite lawyer, Obaba, Dr. Advocate Muzi Skakani. He told y'all, but no. Mabanje, Baba just kulmela, you know, like a lowly man, softly spoken, you know, and you're like, yeah. Nalfut namtele to Skakani wazi. What does he know? Thinks he knows it all. You know, there's this thing about South Africans, particularly black South Africans, who hate intellectual people. Especially intellectual people that distinguish themselves based on principles. It's one thing if you disagree with someone based on issues, but there's this knee-jerk response towards black intellectuals that is based on who knows what. You know, and I've seen this type of thing being meted out to different people over the years, over decades. Since I was a kid, it's almost a norm. You know, but anyway, nevertheless, he told y'all that there are people who are fanatical about loving Umkulu Uzuma, right? And there are those who hate him passionately as well. And it's difficult to deal with these individuals. And it is. Right? I understood it when he said so. Because he wasn't personalizing it. He was stating it as someone who respects the old man, right? And who has worked with him and who's been commanded by him, but also who has represented him in various situations and settings and circumstances. And essentially, when you look at these two groups, according to Dr. Advocate Skakani, is that those who passionately hate him, they see no reason, no rationale. There's nothing that you can tell them that Zuma does that's good, the old man, right? Mkhulu Zuma is incapable of doing any good. He's just a terrible, horrible, evil, demonic person. And to those who love him, Mkhulu Zuma is there to be exploited. Right? He's a means to an end. And they'll do whatever it takes to use him to advance their own things. And this includes his own family members. That's my addition. That was not Dr. Advocate Kakan. And what shenanigans have we had Gwa Moses? Hey, I'm sorry, Gwa Pharaoh. Hey, I'll get to you guys. But Gwa Moses, right? I told you guys that Gwa Moses ila. I told you. And I've made this analysis. I'm not going to go back to it. You can check it out on X, as well as on my TikTok. Last year, when I told you why I'm characterizing MK as Gwa Moses. And unfortunately, you know, when we make these pronouncements, at times you kind of hope that, hey, may it be that I'm wrong, you know? Just like Gwafar, you also hope like, hey, you know what? Hopefully I'll be proven wrong. But nevertheless, Moses, and typical of what happened with Moses and his people in the desert, that's what we see playing out in the MK party. Right? So, look, Nyiko Floyd Shivambu has decided that he will go on a slightly divergent political path. But boy oh boy, what a masterful, I wouldn't say it was graceful, but it was deftly done way. And why do I say so? I say so because he was very clear on his position in relation to the MK party, some individuals in the MK party, and also Umkhulu Zuma, right? He was quite clear about that. He was incisive. And he was concise, straight to the point, right? It was vintage Nyiko Floyd Shivambu. And I think the most telling point about his presser is the fact that he has deference for Zuma, right? He maintains his position, his posture, and the principled position, the point that he made in relation to how he views Zuma, right? There's just no other way to put it, right? He showed total respect to him. And he was clear about what his problem is as well with the people around him. And also then highlighting how these individuals impact how he then relates to Zuma and how Zuma gets to then run the MK party. I think some of y'all are only coming to terms now that you never personalize politics. You can't do that, right? I know that I haven't been active in the streets for quite some time, but I was quite aware, following my last video as well, that some of y'all take this thing too much to the heart. Like it cuts deep. I get it. It's because you have a vested interest in seeing things become better. But that's politics, and politicians know how to exploit that. This includes Ushivambu, by the way, right? They know how to capitalize on people's emotions, on people's wishes. Because why? The situation is dire in our society. These are desperate, desperate times. And so, if you are looking for an answer in politics, you truly are. Because, yes, politics are unavoidable. They're everywhere. They are our daily existence. But you need to know how to navigate politics. You need to know what your relationship is in terms of the politics of the day and the politicians more specifically, right? Don't follow individuals. I don't necessarily always give this kind of instructive points in my analysis, but I do think it's worth saying. Do not fall into the trap of worshipping individuals. Because humans, by our very nature, we will disappoint you. I will disappoint you, because there will be a time when you just do not like my analysis. And then tomorrow you will probably agree with it wholeheartedly. It's just how humans are. But you need to hold me, yourself, and others accountable to the principles, to the values, to the philosophy. That is what is of importance. And I so wish that our people, myself included, you watching this, that we can actually practice this. It's important. Because no revolution, no liberation or project of emancipation can come about if we cannot be true to principles, to values, to philosophies. And we can't succeed in life if we can't do that. It's important. Now back to this, right? The man has pretty much given his rationale of not pursuing actively politics on a high level within the MK. Now, I don't think Nyiko Shivambu was entirely forthcoming. Right? I think there are some things that he held back on. And I think he did so strategically, and we probably have to discuss this in another edition. I sense, I suspect, I believe to an extent that he probably had more conversations with the old man in Gandhi. And this is in part how come he takes this type of posture towards the MK. Right? He's not hostile towards the MK. He respects the MK despite the flaws that the MK has. Right? Because look, the MK has suffered some serious damage in the last month or two. It goes without saying. The infighting, the squabbles, they've done MK no good. So it then became a question of how do they capitalize on a rather unfortunate set of circumstances, a rather negative period, right? A moment upon which the party has somewhat fractured. And I think there have been discussions between him being Shivambu as well as other high-level authority within the MK. The NHC, yeah, fine, it's an official structure within the MK, but I think there's another group that makes decisions. I think it's essential in any revolution or not revolution to do that. So nevertheless, so he will now embark on this journey of supposedly trying to start a political party. Hopefully they don't get to start a political party, because South Africa does not need another political party, right? I've got my reasons for that. I don't think you guys are interested in hearing those reasons, but generally I think the sentiment is that there shouldn't be a political party. I believe the best scenario would be to have a civic organization similar to a Sanko, right? Why? Because the first movement, great movement of Kwakoko, the African National Congress, part of how it was able to iwole bonke labanye abantu, right? The people on the sides, the people who didn't really necessarily want to be affiliated, associated, or become a member of a political party, but still wanted to do good for the public, was to have Isango. And it was a formidable formation in terms of civic action, right? For example, Sanko did a lot of work, particularly in the 90s and 2000s, in your areas such as Eastern Cape, KZN. It's just that we've forgotten this era, right? As much as Abo Kusatu were quite instrumental, Kubo Gauteng and Abo Western Cape, some situations need different political instruments to be able to push the program forward. And I think that's what's going to happen. Because the idea of having a political party does not make any sense. Be that as it may, right? Shivambu was punting this point as a possibility because I sense that he feels that the situation is rather volatile within the MK. So much so, you don't know what the situation is going to be like in a year 2 or 3. And you then want the idea to be there of creating a political party, right? A fallback position. Should it be that the MK is going to completely implode? So in that regard, you want to create a situation where it's a win-win. And so then it will be interesting to see how that aspect plays out, right? So who is he going to bring on board on this journey of establishing this organization? And how does it look like, right? And is it going to have a political program that is about education or about civic responsibility and action? What's going to be the character of this organization? That is far more important than whether it's a political party or a non-profit, for example. And so it then leaves the ball in those who supposedly love Umkhulu, right? So who do we have in this camp? I mean, supposedly the main characters is Ndlamulo, Iskhothane, Flyboy Ndlela, right? Who now fancies himself as a top politician of some sort, right? And then we've got Madam, right? Daddy's girl, Ututuzile Zuma. These are, I suspect, the main characters. I think there are more who are part of that particular outfit. But look, here's the problem about this grouping, right? They are tone deaf, right? They clearly operate similarly to how Ufaru operates. I mean, it's their brand of politics. I mean, how ironic, right? That this faction, Basbiza and Gonja, I'm at the 16th December or some stupid things like that, right? That they use a similar ploy to what Ufaru did to get rid of Umbuyiseni, Quintin, and Lozi. Yeah? I mean, intelligence reports of some sorts, and then, voila. It's one way of isolating and alienating a voice that you do not agree with within a political party. It's an old tactic, right? And Faru has used this to great effect. And apparently, Sis Duduzile believes that, as daddy's girl nami ithi nje ngumngene ngale tactic, right? What usisduduzile nalesikhothane sakhe are forgetting is that the energy that the MK had, which they now put down to their hard work, it was mostly based on Zuma, right? It was his name, it was his branding, but also coupled with that, the energy in the country in the lead up to the elections, because there was actually a lot of apathy in terms of participating in the elections. I don't know whether y'all can remember the mood in South Africa, right? There was no excitement about 2024 elections until the shenanigans following 2023 December 16 came along, and all of a sudden there was a hive of activity, right? There were breaking news, there were court cases, there were things to talk about, right? And to take that good grace or those good graces from ordinary South Africans who volunteered their time to be like, hey, let's invest in this vehicle that is the MK, that is purporting to be about the revolution. And then to think that it's your political geniusness. Like, yo, that's the height of arrogance. Because you don't see your limitations. You do not have the humility to be like, you know what? Yes, I'm part of this thing. I'm part of this moment. And I've got the honor of being in this position. But I do have the limitations. And as it grows, my role will become more defined. I can't hog this position. And it takes wisdom to have that and to be able to do that. And apparently they don't. Right? I don't believe that they do. I really don't. About inkinga yale crew le, it was Kotani no daddy's girl. The problem is that they behave nabaz lama para lawa elokhuzana emakasi baploma nabomkhulu nabomagriza, right? Yibo laba abazofika bashaya abomagriza babo ukuthi no gogo ungawari mina nginawe, I'm always looking out for your interest, laba abanye basile laba mina kuzoba yimi konje likuphi ikhadi lesasa ithi ngiyokhiphela imali wena gogo wami ngizokwazi ukuthengela into zakho bese ngokubhadalele nelokhuza umashonisa ne-funeral policy. Hey, ngenza izinto ezi-right for wena gogo wakho, bheka nje namanje gogo wami ngicela ukugeza nezitsha, hey kucocekile ekhishini. Mina bayivithiza imali yesasa. We know these characters, right? We know these characters. And this is now just happening on a grand scale when it comes to EMK, right? The problem with EMK, ultimately, is the fact that everybody wants to beat the drum, right? It's like, imagine being part of a band and everybody wants to take the lead. And meanwhile, somebody has to be the backup singer. Somebody has to be the Michelle of this Destiny's Child. Right? We need someone who's just going to do the bridge. The bridge is just as important. You know? Yeah, Michelle also got to do her own gospel thing. She wasn't just a useless person. You know? Just because Beyonce became the it girl, it doesn't mean that, Kelly was a nobody, Michelle was really insignificant. It takes the three of them to make Destiny's Child. It's just how it is. In a band, you need the drum player. You need the vocalist. You need the person who's going to play the keyboard, the trumpet, etc., etc. And apparently, this concept does not resonate with the MK ngoba wonke umuntu ufuna ukudrive laphayana. So it's going to be interesting to see which mechanic kuzoba ubani, because this is a mess that needs to be fixed. Because otherwise, Abofaru, they can definitely capitalize on this. Ufikile for Pambalula, angazi ukuthi yena, how can he use this to his advantage? Ulele lapha, ulele yena nje into ayibhekile ukuthuka uba Patrice Motsepe, for example, right? So I mean, there's nothing that Kwakoko is going to do to capitalize on the situation. Ufaru nale gang yakhe, perhaps bona they taking delight because ngiyabona uFaru futhi akasavuki nasekuseni manje. Like Faru does not treat us to 2 o'clock tweets where he's outraged and letting us know what nightmare he's having. Why? Because he's always content makabona abantu balwa, right? I've never seen ubuthakathi okunjena when it comes to ipolitiki, particularly when issues affecting black people. You know, like South African politics when it comes to black people is like cursed, absolutely cursed, right? So it's open season, and it's a key time because we're leading to 2026 with elections to come. I think this is going to be a respite period for each GNU. I mean, if I'm GNU, I'm happy about these developments, right? It means that I'm not going to face any political pressure. The only thing that I would be slightly concerned about is how does this consultative process that Nyiko Shivambu is embarking on is going to impact my 700 million rand deal that I'm trying to push through as a talk show for South Africans, right? Because now we're going to have two processes to compare. And it's going to be interesting to see that how are these going to be approached, right? The one that is led by Mr. Ramaphosa's people is basically one for abo screw. It's a middle class vibe nyana type of thing. Abantu nje who do not even resonate with the people on the ground. So on the other hand, Nyiko Shivambu, what he needs to do with the people that he works with is to ground his within communities. And tactically, that is something that could be to the advantage of progressive forces. But njengoba the progressive forces are fractured, it remains to be seen whether they will capitalize on this. So, all in all, right, I think it was definitely a worthwhile presser to have. I think there are a lot of insights to be taken, right? Not just about Ofaru being called Ofaru, as in the cult that he leads, right? Or the pronouncements about the ANC. I mean, there are things to be taken. I think that's just him as Shivambu hitting back because he knows that the driving force behind some of these shenanigans come from those sides, right? And they're taking a pleasure in seeing what's happening. And so he has to kind of respond to redeem himself politically, to let them know that I see y'all, right? But there's a lot more that is quite significant that's going to happen and that is happening that I think people should be focusing on. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Do you agree or disagree?